former President Jimmy Carter has entered home hospice care in Plains, Georgia. In a statement, the Carter Center said the 98-year-old had, quote, decided to spend his remaining time at home with his family instead of seeking additional medical intervention. More than any former president in recent memory, and maybe ever, Carter's public life has been defined at least as much by what he did after leaving the presidency as what he did during it. After exiting the White House, Carter wrote dozens of books, monitored elections, and mediated conflicts across the globe, and volunteered with his wife, Rosalind, for Habitat for Humanity 1 week every year. As president, though, Carter had more than his share of struggles, including runaway inflation, diplomatic setbacks, PR struggles, and a famous primary challenge in 1980 from then Massachusetts Senator Ted Kennedy. Joining me now to look back at that race and what it meant for the Democratic Party and American politics then and now is Peter Ubertasio, a political scientist and vice president for academic affairs at Stonehill College. He's also the board chair of the JFK Hyannis Museum. And we're joined by Paul Watanabe, professor of political science and director of the Institute for Asian American Studies at UMass Boston. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Peter, you and I have emailed a bit about that 1980 contest over the course of the week. My sense is that you see Kennedy in that moment losing a short-term battle for political influence, but ultimately in the ensuing years winning a bigger war. Is that a fair characterization?
I think that is fair. You know, in 1980, Jimmy Carter was a very weak president. He was viewed as weak by folks in Washington, D.C., by many in the Democratic Party. And he was a fairly moderate, in some instances, conservative Democrat. And he represented a part of the party that had been battling with liberals for a very long time. And so Kennedy used that as an opportunity to challenge him to do something that is very difficult to do, which is to deny renomination to a sitting president. And there was reason to believe in 1979 that Kennedy could be successful. But Carter rebounded for a variety of reasons and thoroughly trounced Kennedy in the primaries. In the aftermath of all of it, it looked as if both men would face political exile. Republicans took firm control of Washington, if not completely. They had a working majority in the House, but they took control of the Senate. Kennedy was in the minority for the first time. Ronald Reagan's conservatism was now the ascendant ideology in D.C., and Kennedy had to go through a period of struggle. I don't think you would have predicted during those early days in the aftermath of 1980 that he would become a senior statesperson in the party, that he would be thoroughly recognized as one of the greatest senators in American history. It took a lot of effort for him to do that, but ultimately he would become, within the working party itself, the more revered figure.
Paul Watanabe, you and I have also talked about that race and what followed it. You've got a bit of a different take on what the outcome was and what the outcome meant, right?
Well, the relationship between the two was a fraught one in 1980. There's no question about it. And you see the trajectories of the two individuals. You see Jimmy Carter, in some respects, the surprise and accidental president emerging in 1976. And you see Ted Kennedy, the scripted individual from the time his brother became president in 1960. There's a sense that he was going to become president of the United States someday. It was all scripted to happen. But in some ways, things got in the way in terms of Ted Kennedy's relationship with the possibility of being president. Chappaquiddick intervened and made it difficult for him to be a candidate in 1992, 1972, or 1976. But in 1980, Ted Kennedy chose to take on the sitting president of his party, and that was and the challenge is the greatest, most significant challenge we've seen in recent times of an incumbent president being challenged by someone from within his own party. And yet he failed in that attempt to unseat President Carter in 1980. And despite the fact of his wonderful speech at the convention, the one that the dream shall never die speech, the dream may never die, but his own aspirations, I think, died in 1980. He had one shot at the presidency. I think he failed in that regard. And I think he never had a shot at doing so. And the facing an electorate larger than the Massachusetts electorate was going to be difficult for him. And his ability as a senator was the fact that he was able to be elected loyally by his constituents here in Massachusetts and make a point at it, but he never was able to extend beyond that Massachusetts electorate in terms of securing a national position.
You brought up Kennedy's speech in 1980. I want to roll just a little bit of it. I've seen many, many times the dream shall never die close that you mentioned. I hadn't seen the entire speech before, and there was one moment that really jumped out at me when Kennedy, to my eye and ear, basically accused Carter of abandoning the soul of the Democratic Party. Let's take a look.
It is the glory and the greatness of our tradition to speak for those who have no voice, to remember those who are forgotten, to respond to the frustrations and fulfill the aspirations of all Americans seeking a better life in a better land. We dare not forsake that tradition. We cannot let the great purposes of the Democratic Party become the bygone passages of history.
Peter, that's a pretty heavy accusation. What did Carter do to elicit that charge from Kennedy?
Well, first of all, I mean, that just is the greatest, one of the greatest speeches that you're likely to hear if you're watching political conventions.
Fantastic speech,
and so you've got this really interesting dynamic where Kennedy is the defeated candidate giving the memorable speech, one that will far outlast the 1980 election. Well, Carter, there were a few things. One, Carter and Kennedy had, as Paul said, a very tense relationship. Personally, these were two men, very different personalities, very different approach to politics. And Carter, again, as Paul said, is kind of this accidental president. Instead of choosing to bring Kennedy into the fold, he really keeps Kennedy at arm's length. And on certain issues, particularly health care, Kennedy found that it was just something he could no longer stand. Carter had promised in 1976 that he was going to have a much more progressive vision for health care. Mm-hmm. When he came into office, it became a very pragmatic, fairly conservative approach. And Kennedy and his team decided they could no longer watch Carter take these issues that meant so much to not only Kennedy, but to the larger party, and pursue it in a way that was almost guaranteed for failure.
Paul Watanabe, I was going to ask you actually to weigh in on a bit of Carter's concession speech and his legacy, but did you want to add to what Peter just said?
Well, a bit of an unfairness, I think, on Kennedy's part in terms of the legacy of Jimmy Carter on issues of liberal concern. Think about it. He was a Deep South senator,
Deep South governor
becoming candidate for president of the United States. The first time, I think, since Zachary Taylor in 1848. That we had a Deep South governor as running for president of the United States. And it's not simply that, it's a contrast to the last governor that we had running for president from the South. Remember, we had George Wallace running in 1972. So the stark contrast between Jimmy Carter, someone who fought segregation in the South and really fought it with even in his own family, segregationists in his own family, is a deeply important civil rights message to the country. And the fact that Jimmy Carter is the first one to really shed light on the issue of the energy crisis here in the United States, something that became a very big issue and a very liberal concern subsequently. And lots of those issues, he created the Department of Education, Department of Energy in the United States government and the federal government. He made a number of different forays into the area of liberal politics and so forth, but he certainly was affected by the stagflation of the time and some foreign policy challenges of which he had mixed results. There's no question about it.
I have been going to ask you to talk about Kennedy's legacy, Carter's legacy moving forward. You've just done a great job of highlighting some things that people should bear in mind. Let's just show a little bit, or look at a little bit of Carter's concession speech, where he expressed a desire that despite losing so badly to Reagan, some of the things he'd done were going to stand the test of time.
I've not achieved all I set out to do. Perhaps no one ever does. But we have faced the tough issues. We've stood for and we fought for and we have achieved some very important goals for our country. These efforts will not end with this administration. The effort must go on, nor will the progress that we have made be lost when we leave office.
It was also striking when I watched that particular speech, the sincerity and enthusiasm with which he urged all Americans to get behind Ronald Reagan, help Reagan achieve what he wanted to achieve for the country, stand behind the new president. It maybe should not be striking, but we're in a moment where that kind of sentiment is striking, and it was affecting to watch that. I want to get both of you to take a look at Another piece of video, this is my colleague Peter Kadzis, our senior political editor here at WGBH. I asked him to do some of what I'm asking you here today to do, to reflect on the influence that that campaign had on the Democratic Party moving forward. Here is what Peter had to say.
Ronald Reagan was the game changer for the Democrats. He not only changed politics in Washington, D.C., he revolutionized politics across America in a way that no one had done since FDR. Bill Clinton is the sort of bastard child of Ronald Reagan. You look at Obama and you see two strands of the double helix of a DNA together. You see a little bit of Clinton and you see a little bit of Ted Kennedy. That doesn't mean Ted Kennedy isn't a significant historical figure, but his run against Jimmy Carter is poof, ancient history.
Peter Ubertasio, was there anything about Carter that paved the way for Clinton, to your mind, in addition to the fact that Carter lost really badly to Ronald Reagan? Was he a proto-Clinton in any way, shape, or form?
Well, Clinton and Carter do share a very important heritage. They are moderate Southern governors in the who took on states that were thoroughly segregationist. Clinton was fairly young when he was elected. But remember, he goes back to the 1970s also, as he's organizing and then first becoming governor of Arkansas. And both Arkansas and Georgia had very fraught histories with segregation, and so Carter and Clinton represent a new era of Southern governors in the Democratic Party, but they also represent the final moment of Democrats in power in the South. It's from Carter to Clinton, the South, which had been already starting to move Republican, becomes thoroughly Republican. So that today it is the most Republican part of the country. They are really unable to consolidate their gains as very successful governors into successes for the Democratic Party.
Paul Watanabe, I want to talk about the moment that we're in right now. Is the memory of this 1980 primary fight one reason that we're unlikely to see a big-name Democrat take on Joe Biden in 2024, despite some of the struggles Biden has had?
Well, one of the important things about the victory of Jimmy Carter is it really set a tone for subsequent victories by Democrats in the White House. If you really think about it, there was a sense in which we saw Jimmy Carter as an accidental surprise choice in 1976. We saw a similar dynamic in terms of Bill Clinton in 1992. He was a bit of a surprise. And Barack Obama subsequently as well. These are individuals who came from the outside, if you will, and did not follow the notion. They were not individuals like Ronald Reagan, who was well known, or George Bush, who was a vice president, or even somebody like the George Bush Jr., who was part of the political legacy, or even Donald Trump, who's a well-known figure. Yeah. In some ways, Joe Biden is a classic return to. Sorry.
As long as you hang up on him, we're good.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. It happens.
And George Bush and even Donald Trump represents this tradition of looking back to sort of traditional figures, and the introduction of new faces into the presidency is something that Jimmy Carter really helped to start, and has been the success of Democrats since that time. If you think about the success of an individual like the governor of Barack Obama and individuals like him.
Peter, just briefly, I want to get your take on the same thing. Did this serve as a cautionary tale that's going to keep us from seeing something similar again? You've got about 20 seconds. Absolutely.
Carter-Kennedy is the last time you see an incumbent Democratic president challenged for renomination, and we're certainly not going to see it under Biden. I think they recognize that it's a very difficult thing to do for very limited gains.
All right, Peter Ubertasio, Paul Watanabe, thank you both.